Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam, Hilchos Shvisas Yom Tov, the final 2 chapters, Zayin and Ches, and starting Hilchos Chametz Umatzah Perek Aleph. Let us start with today's first chapter, which is the 7th chapter of Hilchos Shvisas Yom Tov. We're going to learn about the prohibition of doing work on Chol HaMoed, the heterim that are needed for the certain circumstances in which we are allowed to do work. When we speak about work, we'll define the word work in a different way that the word work is defined for Shabbos or for Yom Tov proper, as we will see. So B'kitzur, it's all about Chol HaMoed. This chapter has 25 halachas. Beginning with halacha Aleph, says the Rambam, which means to rest, to refrain from work. However, mikra kodesh, and zman chagiga b'mikdash. 2 things. In scripture, it's called a day, which is mikra kodesh. Also, in the Beis HaMikdash, it's the time to bring the carbon chagiga. Now, really, as we'll learn, the ideal time to bring the carbon chagiga on Yom Tov is on the first day. But if a person did not bring it on the first day, then they are obligated to bring it during Chol HaMoed. Therefore, Asur Basiyas Malacha. We begin not by it's a day where everything is permitted, but there are a few restrictions. It's the opposite direction. It's a day in which we're not allowed to do malacha. That has no kedusha at all. And again, when we speak about the word malacha, it doesn't mean the word malacha is not defined halachically the way it is defined for Shabbos and Yom Tov. But nevertheless, whatever malacha means, we begin that it's asur. And even though there won't be any biblical punishment, but and the Rambam says clearly that is asura by ki Yom Tov. In other words, can't define malacha the same way, because the purpose why we may not do work is and we achieve that even though we won't restrict the work as it is restricted on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Nevertheless, we will achieve the goal. Since there'll be many restrictions, we won't experience what we do on a weekday. We will experience a kodesh dikadei. And lefikach yesh malachas asuras boy, and the yesh malachas mutaras boy. And let's go halacha beis ve'elohim. Let's begin with the hetay. Kol malachas she'im lo yasa oisa b'moed. If you won't do it now, there'll be a large loss. Then oisen, you may do it. Even that, it should not be extremely troublesome. Tirchi, you say it will still be asur even by hefsid meruba. Let's go with examples. Ketzad, mashkin beis hashalchin b'moyed, irrigated. If you want to irrigate parched land, if you won't irrigate it, whatever is planted there will die. But in other words, a land that's properly irrigated, even if there's going to be an advantage of it being watered also on Yom Tov, but if not, there won't be a hefsid meruba. In other words, Beis HaShalchin is unique. She'im lo yashke Beis HaShalchin, which is defined here as ha'aretz chatzmeya, a very parched piece of land, then yifastu kol eilanu sheba, all of the trees that are planted there will get ruined. However, so even when you are now allowed to irrigate it, you can't get water with a bucket. In one, the yashkem and abrecha from a pool, which is schlepping water from one location to the other, because that's going to be a Torah gadol. What could you do when you have a mayin? A mayin is a spring that's already flowing on its own. Whether the spring already existed or whether it was uncovered anew. Point is, it's water that's already going towards the direction of. So the amount of distance that you need to take the water is less. You are allowed to turn over your olives. Because if you don't turn over the olives in the olive vat, then they will get ruined. Hefsid meruba. And you can grind them and you can trample on them. You can fill up your barrels with the oil and you can seal them with guf oisam, that's sealing. Why? Because shakol sheyesh boy hefsid im loy naseh. Then oisa kedarkev ein tzarich shinui. And we'll see later a shinui will be of help. You don't need a shinui, like we said before in halacha beis. Hefsid meruba, as long as it's not tircha yiseda, you can do it normally. You have your produce drying, or they're out for any reason, but there is a fear that they'll be stolen. Hefsid meruba, you can bring them in. So now we're learning that sometimes you should do things in a more private way. The shoyla pishtanoi, you are allowed to remove your flax min hamishna from the soaking vat. Because there are so many times that in this process, if you won't remove it, it's going to get ruined. If you have a vineyard, that the time came for it to be harvested during Bamoyed. In other words, it's not that you could have done it before. The time came now. If you won't harvest it now, it will get ruined. Then so you can harvest it during Chalamoid. However, everything that we mentioned, the exceptions which allow us to do it, that melacha on Chalamoid, leaving it purposefully, could have been done before Yom. You're going to leave it for Chalamoid because anyways, most other melachas I can't do. That may not be done. And a person purposefully intended not to do something which could have been done before, and you left it for it to be done la moyed. Here we're meaning Chalamoid. Even after you did it, not only may you not do it, post facto, Beis Din ma'abdin oisei, the Beis Din will destroy it, and they'll be mafked it, not to have any benefit from it. However, that's a knas. So what happens if the person who did it from Kivin Malachli and the person who did it passed away? We have this in many other scenarios. In other words, it's a Isam Gavra, let's say. The thing, it's not like you cook food on Shabbos. So the Ein Koinsin B'nai Achrov, the Ein Ma'abdem Es B'moinei of the heirs, the Ein Moinen Es Aben Milas Esoysim Malach B'moid. Furthermore, it's not that the father harvested the vineyard on Chalamoid and he could have done it before. Let's say the father could have done it before and the father passed away during the days of Yom Tov. Then the son, lechatchila, can harvest it during Chalamoid because the son, it wasn't on him to do it before. This is something, as we mentioned, that was the first heter, that there's a hefsed harbe. And it's not considered halachically something that has a toira harbe, for which you don't even have to make a shino, you do it on Chalamoid. Halacha, hey, if you have to sew a garment, to live in a certain build, makim b'moyed. So there's another concept that if you are a non-professional, you're not skilled. So that's another difference. You're not going to be doing a skilled labor. Then but if you need to sew a garment, again, we're speaking about something that could not have been done before. You have a garment that tore on Yom Tov, but you happen to be a skilled sewer, tailor. Then you have to downgrade the quality of your work. But it should be Maisa Hedyet. And for example, if you are sewing mechalev, all right, now you need pictures for this, whatever it means, right? You're sewing it as a weaver would. It's not going to be a professional type of fixing. If it's a building, you can lay stones, but you can't smear them with tit, can't plaster them. If you have to cover the cracks, normally you would use a roller. Don't use a roller. Use your hand. Use your foot. In other words, the effect can be the same as if you use the keli that is used to put plaster on these areas to cover all the cracks. It's called in English a trowel. You can't use a trowel, even though the effect will look like, because you did it kemaisa head. If you have grain that's still attached to the ground, then you don't have what to eat. That's the only food. Here, another heter. Even though you're not, the tfuah, unlike grapes, when it's ready to be harvested, if you allow it to remain on the vines, it will get ruined. That's not the case by the grain. So So ein matzrich and oisa, we don't require for the balabas to buy that same product minashuk in order for him to harvest his own after Yom Tov. That not. You don't have what to eat, all of the steps. You can harvest it, and then you can gather it, and then you can thresh it, then you can zoira it, you can winnow it, and then you can separate it, and v'toichen, you can grind it. But shinoi, kol mashut tzarech, what will be a shinoi? So the Rambam says when it comes to threshing, the best way to thresh is to use oxen. What do we know? Don't use oxen. Shekol davar she'ein by hefsei, even though it's mutter for this other heter, because you need it for the tzoyre chamoyed. Here you have to have a shinui. It's a good thing to remember. Food that you desire to pickle. Now, guys, pickling is something interesting. If I do all of the malach of pickling, the product many times needs to sit in the pickled juices, how long, for a month, that you may not do because you're not going to benefit from it on the moyed. If you are able to pickle it and to use it on the moyed, then kaifshan. But if it's a type of pickling process that will not be ready anyways until after the Yom Tov, then you're not allowed to do it. But so a person can trap fish. Fish that you're gonna trap. Now, guys, salting b'chal was done to preserve. So hold on. Why am I allowed Yakir to trap fish and to salt them? Doesn't that mean that I'm going to preserve it for after Moyed? So the Rambam writes that when you salt fish, if you choose now to eat from that fish, you are able to squeeze the salt out and eat it. So there's a possibility that you will be able to use it on. So therefore, since it's possible that it will be l'tzoyre chamoyed, I don't know the answer to that. By meat, listen, let me go like this second. If I'm shechting an animal, if I don't need any of the meat, then you can't do it. But you need the meat. We already said if I need the meat, even on Yom Tov proper, even though ein Yom Tov meichel l'choil, but if I need only one kazais, I can shech the big the shayr habar. So that's I'm here by fish. We're speaking about I put a trap. So what do I do now? I only needed one fish. In my trap came 50 fish. Take it and salt it. And because each one can be eaten. Even if I salt it a lot, I can squeeze it out. That's the word. Halacha 8. Matil and sheikh b'moed, a person is allowed to set beer to ferment. What type of beer? Any type of beer. Whether it's date beer, barley beer. The person might even have beer in the storage. So now my question is, what is more geshmak? Old beer or fresh beer? Depends. So a person can say, today I want to have fresh beer, even if it's not completely true. He's ma'arim. U'ma'arim v'shoysim en achadosh. She'ein haramazuni keres l'roya. Now ma'arim means ma'arim v'shoysim. Right, by oisa ve'ezbenoi, if you remember, you take both animals out, you only end up shechting one. If I make beer, and I had old beer, I make new beer, even though be'emes, I don't like new beer, or I don't need new beer. I have to drink from it, but that will be okay, because then people see you made it and you used it. Halacha 9. Kol malachi she'em l'tzoyre chamayed, yishoisen oisan u'maneihem, when they are done by professionals, they have to be done b'tzina and private. Ketzet, for example, that's yodim hunters, v'hatoichanim chveis millers, v'aboitzrim harvesters. And the people are doing it professional, means you're doing it to sell in the shuk. Now, 1 second. Shuk doesn't mean you don't need it for the moed. Of course, people have to buy food on cholamoid. So there's a heter that's l'tzoyre chamoid. But still, you're going to hunt, do it b'tzina. Hadei elu oisem b'tzina l'tzoyre chamoid. Now, v'ha'oisa shaloi l'tzoyre chamoid. Also, who knows? God knows. And here also, like we learned before by the fishing, if you do it l'tzoyre chamoid and you have an extra, that's okay. Hadei zamut. Another heter. The main takeaway I think from this chapter should be is that it's not that things are mutter, but Aleph is also, Beis is also, Gimel is also. It's the opposite direction. The premise is Cholamoid also. Elama, we'll find out there are many hetedim. In actuality, there are many hetedim. But if you get that concept, you need a heted, it changes the way you view Cholamoid. It's a Yom Kodesh. It's a Yom Moyed. Elama, Chaylos. Halacha Yud. Anything that's considered public need may be done, for example, The saknin you can fix any type of waterworks that need to be fixed can be done. Larger roads, little paths, they all can be fixed. You can actually dig for the public new and you can dig for them rivers if people need to drink their waters. If you have those reservoirs, but they are empty. Now, schlepping water, my friends, sometimes can be difficult work. If it's l'tzoyro charabim, do it. It came if there are cracks, fix the cracks. Take away the thorns from the pathways. You can measure the mikvahs, and actually then margilim means you can bring water there directly, even with your feet. It means, even though we learned before, when it comes to irrigating a beis hashulachin, that was the first het that hefsed meruba. But there tirchi etzeda zasar, so you can only bring, even if there's going to be a hefsed meruba, you can only bring the water if it's not through margilim. Here you can bring it directly, shvitz with buckets. Umashlimim shiyura halacha yud aleph. Also, v'yoytzen shluchei bezdin lahafkeres hakalayim. People were already warned on a Rosh Chodesh Adar, if you remember. Then, like shluchim went out, and if ultimately on a chalamayit people did not take away the kalayim, then bezdin will be mafkeret. That was the punishment that we gave, because initially all bezdin did is they ripped it out. Then the balabas says, why should I shvitz? No one planted kalayim. It happened by itself. Why should I take away the kalayim? If I won't do it, bezdin will do it for me. Let them do it. They would take away the kalayim and they would be mafker the whole field. You don't say chalamoyed. By Miras Yantiv, let that Jew, God forbid, sit in jail. And you can. Okay, very good. So that's the answer. You answered the question. If there's a pikuach nefesh involved, you do it anytime. If it's not pikuach nefesh, and you collect. These are pledges that people make for the Beis Hamikdash. Could be collected on Cholamoid. So there's Tzorah Charabim, and this for the Beis Hamikdash. Whether it's an Erech vow, whether it's a Chedim vow, whether it's a normal Hegdish vow, we'll learn about that later. You can make soitas, drink, just lahoid. We spoke it out when we learned Hilchos Soita, that the Rambam writes the word soita with a sin, not with a samach. Here you see it, at least by me. Mashkinas soitas, I don't know your version. And that's the whole word, that ain't Adam. We're speaking about the paraduma, and if they have to, they write the decapitating egla rufa if someone is found murdered outside the city. To pierce the ear, and you can remark the graves. Why do you have to remark them? Because they used to put lime. Lime gets washed away if there's a big rain season. And what's the purpose of marking a grave? Not to become tamei. It's amazing. Not to say of that individual. Everyone should know that if I get kidnapped, I will be. No leaf will be unturned, even on Cholamayit. Beis Hamikdash is called Tzarchei Rabin. Allah Yud Beis. We've done. Sure. In the Beis HaChaim itself, we're going to the Holy Land right now. You have Kavanim all over the place. You'll be driving by, maybe not. Doesn't matter. Who was it? Was Rabbi Nohu, right? Baba Basra. That was his hobby. That was his mitzvah. To go into the graves and measure them and go above the ground. He was the one that went up to Mara Samachpela. Like Mara Samachpela, where exactly can a kohen not go? We don't know now. We knew then exactly where the Ma'ara is, and they would make sure that right above it, no one can walk. Halacha Yud Beis. The done in Dinei Mamanis, you can adjudicate financial Dinei Torah and the Dinei Makois and the Dinei Nefashos B'Moyed and more. Umishul Ekibul all of us adin v'sham temoisoi B'Moyed uchashem shadana B'Moyed kach koisven ma'ase beis din v'chala doim eloi. Even though normally you're again writing without a heter, you may not write. So all of the types of courts documents, if you can adjudicate, then you can write. For example, many times, someone, a financial case, a property has to be evaluated. And the Rambam is going to describe later how many people have to be involved in the evaluation, and all of that has to be documented. Or sometimes property will be, it's amazing. sold by the Beis Din to provide not a Yerusha money, that which comes before the Yerusha, which is the sustenance of the Isha and the Banos, which is from Tanai Beis Din. V'shitrei chalitza umeyunim, even though the chalitza happened, but she has to have proof. You understand? Anything that has to be written is a chiddush, even though why? We know what happened. We know the number. No, anything that has to be remembered can even be written on Chol. Don't leave it for later. You're going, Tainas Baladinim, or Devarim Shekibu Alayim. You're going, if a man says in a din Torah, even though the halachically that person is not going to be Neman, no, Ish Pleni Neman Olay, or Ish Pleni Yodonli. We make sure we remember what he said. Now there's a Gemara that says that if you lend money, if you don't write it down, write your over lifnei iver, the guy might come and deny it. Here, the Rambam is writing, if only if, then you can write it down. And a shoiver, which is a receipt, and a gift. I think it's Kitzar Cherabim, like we mentioned before, because every Yid has to know that if I will have such a need, that will be allowed. Just that knowledge gives people ease on Chol HaMoed. Halacha Yud Gimel. What you may not write is afilu svarim tefillin mezuzos, which is something that a sefer would do. Right? We don't put on tefillin on Chol HaMoed. But imagine if you can give your tefillin into check and get a amacha. You know you can't do that. The ein magin afilu ois achas b'sefer even v'ha'azora, because that's a malacha she'ein tzorech hamoed. Avo koisefu adam tefillin mezuzah la'atzmai, which is quite amazing. Now, why is that called tzorech hamoed, my friend? Is it because the Rambam holds you put on tefillin on Chol HaMoed? The toivet chelis lebigdoi, because that you need to wear. The im ein loy ma yoichamad. There's one other big heter, and it's a whole different thing. The malach itself may not be done, but the guy who's doing it, Yakir, gets paid for that job. If he doesn't have money to buy for yontif, then he can do that. But not limitless. Kedei parnasasoy. Wow. In other words, social correspondence may be written. You can record your cheshbonos, you can record your budget, because everything, both social correspondence and your own budgeting, you're not doing a professional work. And which is allowed. Allah tezvav. Oisim kol tzor chameis v'moed. Goyzes and sa'arei, even though nowadays we don't do that, but they used to cut their hair. Umachapsim ksusoi, and you make an arain. And you know how far back you go? Very far. Not all the way back to the beginning, but quite far. If you don't have boards to make the casket, then koiros is already cut trees. You can bring the koiros. The noisem hem the sodom bitzina b'techabais. The im hoya adam before some. And you can even do it bashuk, because everyone knows that it's being done for the mace. But how far back do you go? You can't begin from the beginning. What does that mean? Does it mean that if there's no nesarim, what does it mean? It means you'll bury him without a casket. That's what it means. No, it's not preventing the burial. A very good kasha. Maybe the boards for the beer. Also, if you're building a cave and you have to have stones to hew out the stones, the first step. Now, where do you bury? So you bury without a bias. You bury in the ground. It's not going to prevent the burial. Why? Right? There has to be the right time, because Shema Ymatzi Tamei. And what will happen? We learned that we just ended up reading this in the parsha. We spoke out the question. The question is, so what? The person is ill. What, the doctor is not going to tell the person you have cancer because I don't want to ruin your Yom Tov. Well, you tell the guy he has cancer to start chemo today. It's not the same, because Bigashmi is, I can take your pill and I'll get healed. Ruchni is, which is what a nega is about, I have to do my own avodah. And I have to be ready to do my own avodah. And if I'm not ready, if I'm in the zone of Chag, it's not going to be effective. Why? It's called Ema Arvin Simcha B'Simcha. Avol, let's go. If you are machzir as Kedushasoi, it's not such a big simcha. So you can do it. Another thing, you can get engaged. Why can you get engaged? Shema Yekadneroach. Don't make a suda l'surusin. Kadesh lo ya'arav simchas acheres v'simchas achad. Halacha Yud Zayin. In Megalchen, you can't shave. Speaking about hair cutting, what we call shaving is because they use the razor. The ein machabsim, you cannot launder b'moyed. Why? Since anyways, there's nothing else to do on Cholamoyed, I'll do it on Cholamoyed. And so what? Because then v'yava yom tefarishin when you're maneuver. Now, since that's the reason, what happens if someone was unable to do it before? Then they are allowed. Lefikach kol mishi afshalei legaleach elechabes berev yom tiv. Harei zemut elechabes ulegaleach. Halacha yud ches keitzad avol shechal shvi shalei liyas b'yom tov. Understand? You couldn't have done it before. Or shechal liyas be'erev yom tov harei Shabbos. In other words, prior to yom tov, because of avelus, you were not allowed to take a haircut. Or practically, a guy was on a ship, not today's ships. Those ships, there was no barbers on the ship. He arrived at a Yom Tov. He couldn't have taken a haircut. And now, 1 second. Why did you go on a trip? If you wanted a trip to be a tour, garnished. I don't care that you came out of Yom Tov. He didn't go Latayel. He went because of business. He needed Parnasa. It was or if someone was released, Mebeis HaShivya or Mebeis HaSurim, out of Yom Tov or on Yom Tov, or Mish Oyem Menuda, and a manuda could not have taken a haircut. You can't go. You can't give him a haircut. Or misha nishba shalei legalech shalei lechabes ulei nishal lechacham v'hita nidrei ela b'moyed. He couldn't have done it. Then harei ela megalcham lechabsam b'moyed. And even in these cases, you have to know the emes. Halacha yutes v'kulam shoylam pnai legalech koydem haregel v'lei gilcha asurim. Aber la nozir v'hametzeido shigias man tiglachton bein b'toich hamoyed bein koydem haregel. Afal pi shoylam pnai, we're more lenient. Mutarim legalech b'moyed. Why? Because both the nozir and the metzeido, the carbon or the carbonois are connected to their giluach. It's not just they won't take a haircut. That will prevent them of bringing their carbonois. So we're more lenient. The din is mutar legalech b'moyed. Another din, v'kotnu shenoylad ben hamoyed ben lefnei hamoyed, mutar legalchei b'moyed. V'anshe mishmar shoshalma mishmarta m'toich hamoyed. And during the week of the mishmar, they cannot take a haircut. Mutarim legaleach. V'pnei she'anshe mishmar asurim legalech b'shabbos shalahem. Yeah, in other words, you couldn't have given a haircut before. It was just born. To a baby. We're not talking about the minute that we have not to take a haircut. For a boy, a girl, even with our minhag today. Guys, I just want to say like this, that theoretically, one of the biggest challenges that we have today is laundering clothing in a home. Laundering used to be a big malacha, Today with the machines, laundering is not malacha, but we can't launder. Say that. Okay, I'm just asking, maybe make an argument that most of us don't have enough clothing to last through. Now there's hatadim if they're kids under 2. I don't want to go into the Shulchan Aruch, but not in those hatadim. There's adults, only adults. Why don't we say, I did everything I could before Yom Tov. I laundered all of the clothing, all of my underwear, and it got dirty. So we're going to have Sunnah Din that if you only have one garment, you can clean it. In those days, one garment you have to clean. Maybe nowadays, if you have 10 changes of underwear, but you're living in Miami, where every time you walk outside, everything gets wet, you have to change your undergarments the whole time. Maybe that will be a heter. Just putting it out. You can trim your mustache. The mustache is like fingernails. Many times it always goes together in halach. And to cut your nails. And even bekeli. That's not called giluach. It has nothing to do with your hair. A woman can remove her hair from her underarms. Also, which is koichelas, that's painting the eyes. Upaisekas is parting her hair. Putting rouge. Putting on a line that was done to make their skin look nicer, or whatever it is to take off hair. Whatever she's doing has to be something for which the benefit already happens. They are allowed to launder. You have to understand, my friends, that they wore, aside of Tumah Vatana, they had clothing that was dirty. Now that they're becoming tar, they want to clean their clothing. Another than that's what I was saying. Maybe today 10 clothings is like the chaluk echad. I don't know, theoretically. Another example. Hand towels, barber towels, bathing towels. In other words, not one, you have 10. But they get dirty the whole time. So you can wash it on Yom Tov because I washed it before, but it gets used during Yom Tov. And also clay pishtan. You have to wash them the whole time. They get dirty. So no, anything that, it's not that I could have done it before, I could not have done it before. Another din. Can't do business. Hold on. No, it's again, the premise is you can't, and then you could. Now we'll find it. Now the big heter. In other words, it's an opportunity that is not going to come around Tamid. It doesn't mean it will never come again. It's not a common opportunity. After Yom Tov, like for example, a new container came to the shtetl. Who's going to get the best chayra? The people who come right now to buy it. So people who want to leave, and because of this urgency of leaving, they're going to sell certain merchandises. People are leaving, and I have schayra that they need on the ship, and they're going to pay me a lot of money for it if I sell them now. Oh, we need the money. We'll say so. You need the money, you can do it. He's going to write so. We wrote it before by the Soifid. We'll have it so. See, even in this, there's limitations. In other words, even if it's a davar ha'avud, that no. Now, halacha chav gimel moichri peiris ksus v'kelim moich havetzin on tzedek hamoyeh. Tzedek hamoyeh means kegetz adam hoisach hanus psucha lezavi yisrael mavoy. I can open the store kedarkoi because people don't see it open to the reshus harabim. But the im hoya pchusa, im hoya pesucha l'reshus harabim, don't open both doors. When is the exception? The ed of Yom Tov ha'achron shel Chag HaSukkos. People, everyone who's there is buying food. Food doesn't last that long. They're buying food for Shmini Atzeres. Moitzi or ma'ateres hashuk ba'peiros, because it's clear it's kavod Yom Tov. Moichrei tevarim, moichrei kedakim befaresi. We already spoke about tevalim that can be ground on Yom Tov proper. Why? Because you can't grind spices then and have it fresh for a couple of days. We understand that this is for Yom Tov. Now, halacha chavdal kol she'asal lasoisei b'moyeh einoi oimer l'goy lasoisei. V'chol she'asal lasoisei b'moyeh. Here you go, yakir, for you. Im ein loy ma yoichel. So the item itself has no heter, but I need the money. Areza oisa kedei parnasosoi. Kedei parnasosoi means not to make $1 million to last me in LA for 2 months. To make only what I need for this month, $500,000. You make it for Yom Tov. Another thing. I don't need the money right now. But you know what? There are aniyim that need to get paid for doing work. I'm going to do work, not for me, even though I'm going to benefit. For the ani to get paid, that's also okay. Which taka cannot be done. Why? He should get his chad by. Beautiful. In other words, I'm buying something that I don't need. It's not needed, but the seller needs to make the sale. Halacha chafei, the final halacha of this chapter. You may hire a worker al malacha b'moyed, even though it's only for it to be done afterwards. Okay, so you're making up with him. I'm going to pay you $500. Go do that job. Another thing. Goy a goy that has been contracted. Contracted means he's not getting paid for the day. He's getting paid for the job. Even if he's doing work chutz l'tchum, he cannot do it on chol, because everyone knows that he's doing that malacha of a yid. And so what? When it comes to a contract, theoretically, it's not a midah la'akum, because as far as I'm concerned, let him do it afterwards. He's doing it quicker for him to get paid quicker. Can't do it. Why? Because there's a chshad. Because the Yachshu to Oisai that Sacharas Hagoy Lashes Mamoy. People don't know what agreement they made. She'ena Kol Yodim Hefresh Sheyesh Ben Sachar Ben Hakablet, and therefore it's us. And I just want to conclude this chapter that this, no doubt, I see from here is a big Nisayan. It's a big Nisayan here. People, Baruch Hashem, when a person is able, either they buy a house and they fix it over, or they're fixing over the house that they're living in, or they're putting in an ADU, an IDU, they're doing all these things. And we all know when it comes to construction, once you're in the flow, it's expensive to stop it. And it says sometimes things can get ruined. Can't work on Cholamoid. Can't work on Cholamoid. Real estate cannot be built on Cholamoid. And Ashreinu, for all the people that I know here, that Omid bin Asoy, and it costs them money. Okay, moving on to the final chapter of the laws of Shvisas Yom Tov, Perek Shmini. Perek Shmini is going to go into many different, we're concluding, all different types of malachas, and we will also be learning about malacha on Erev Yom Tov. See, interestingly, by Hilchos Shabbos, the Rambam spoke all about malachas and Erev Shabbos leading up to the Lamates malachas. Here, by Hilchos Yom Tov, we're leaving it for the end. This chapter has 21 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. When streams are already flowing from a pond. And we did make mention to this in the previous chapter. We differentiated between me irrigating a Beis HaSholchin, which is a parched parcel of land, in which there will be a loss if it won't be irrigated. Anafkamina yakir, if I have to schlep the water, b'tirchi yisera, or if the water is near. So it's not tirchi yisera. Muter lahashkois mehen Beis HaSholchin b'moyed, but v'hu shaloi pasku. In other words, the stream has to be connected. Why? I'll tell you why. Because if the river is not connected to the source, or if the stream is not connected to the source, even though there's still water in the stream near the field, this water will end. And if I'm in the middle of doing the work, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to go back and I'm going to schlep more water. I'm going to end up doing tirchi yisera. So that's another nuance we didn't learn in the previous chapter. They're constantly being refilled. If you have a pond, that it's being created from where? From a Beis HaSholchin. Shalhin, Hashalahin, or with a hay, with a ches, different girsois. In other words, the water is constantly dripping in there. The source of the water is being refilled, and that source is near my field. Mutter lahashkis mimenu Beis HaSholchin or Shalchen acheres, as long as all the same nakud, which is that if I am taking water, yakir, even though I'm taking it from a place that's near my field, there is no tircha yisera. If there's a high chance that this source, my source, will be dried out, then I'll end up going to a faraway source. That's called tircha yisera. And even though there's a hefsid meruba, we learned tircha yisera will not be allowed. Halacha beis. Aruga, if you have a row of crops, you have a patch of crops, but it's not all together. Bringing the water uphill, tircha yisera. But in the other direction, if the water is in the higher part, then you can take water and bring it down. Okay, now here, like this, because it's a hill. So what they do is they make like steps, and on every step you plant. So So if the water is sourced on the top one, which is great, bringing it down is not called tirchi yisera. If you have to bring the water in the opposite direction, it's called tirchi yisera. Another thing. Unlike Yakir, irrigating a field, you know how much water you need? It means if the water is not nearby, tirchi yisera, for vegetables, you can water it. Big deal. You'll schlep one pail even from the well. It's not tirchi yisera, but only because you need that on Yom Tov. But if you are only watering it now, then awesome. In the by the roots of the vines, they would make some sort of pits. If that would be there to collect water. Can't do it lachatchila. But if it was already done, even though it became impaired, now you're only fixing it. Fixing it is a lot. A whole irrigation patch, the whole irrigation ditch, amasamayim that was already made, nor was then it became mikulkal. And let me add what we learned in the previous chapter. Not sheneskalkulu enough time before Yom Tov that you could have fixed it before. Then we're going to be a lot more strict. And if you'll do it, we'll cancel you. But the problem came about on Yom Tov. You can fix it. If it was only a mukatefa and you need it to be deeper, then so you see there's a limit how much you can fix it. That's not called tirchi yisera. Me'ilan ilan means not to the rest of the field, only from the trees. But if the whole sada is already lacham, so therefore the amount of water that's needed is not so much. I'll tell you more. So therefore it won't be discernible. People won't notice. That's also part of what we learned in the previous chapter. If it's nikar, remember, do it pitzina. Another thing, umar b'tzinas hasada b'moed, you are allowed to sprinkle an entire field. No tirchi yisera. Halachas dalet. Zroim shaleshasu malifnei hamoyed. Plants that were not watered. Leyashka b'moyed. Why? Because if they were not watered before, they need a lot. And now you are allowed to change the direction of a river. You understand? So that's not called tirchi yisera. There's tremendous benefit. You just redirect it. Or v'leftayach nor shenistam. So it was the nahar was already there. The dam was dammed. You're opening it up. You can clean them out. Like you can fix it, but you can't make it from the outside. Now, why did the Rambam write shal yachid? Because we learned in the previous chapter. Remember that shal rabim you can do everything on chalamayim. Another than the even she'ena tzarich lahem, because it's not a tirchi yisera. But oisin nivreches b'moyed, you are allowed to make a small pool that was used to soak flax on chol hamoyed. Halacha hey achbarim. If you have rodents that are ruining your trees, so then you can trap them b'moyed. Now, do you have to make a shinoi? Depends. If it's b'stei ha'ilon, in which there's going to be a big loss if you don't trap them, they're going to eat up all of your fruits. Then sod kedarkoi. Now we'll learn how to trap rodents. Everything is in the Torah. So we're going to learn how to trap rodents kedarkoi and how to trap them shaloi kedarkoi. What's kedarkoi? Chayfer and v'toila hametzuda. In other words, they would dig in the ground and implant in the ground all these traps, and they're going to be trapped in it. But if stay loving stay loving means here. Here it means an unplowed field. Unplowed field means that the fact that there are rodents in this stay loving is not a problem, but they're near the orchard. If you won't trap them here, maybe they'll go there. So then you can beat sudden noise and stay loving, but you have to make a shinui. Now, what's called trapping b'shinoi? Then the din is noyetz shaput ba'aretz. You put a shaft into the ground, umaka bakardum, and you knock it. I think the banging it is the noise will attract them, and then you take it out of the ground. So they heard noise, they know exactly where it came from. When you take the stick out of the ground, what happens, Zakir? There's a hole in the ground. And when they come to check out what's happening, they fall into the guma. Some of the Rambam didn't have a cat. Allah chavod. Mamash, it works, huh? A wall of a garden that fell in. We learned in the last chapter. Ma'aseh means you put the layers of stones one on the other, but loy tach betit. Pashat. Oy goyder oyso, you fence the gina. The gina has to be protected. A bekanim with reeds, v'goymech, bulrush, different types of bushes. That is a gina. But you know what? A chatzir is more important because a chatzir, people live there. Aval kaisel chatzir shenafal. That's key. If you could have done it before, you can't do it, but it fell. Then boinei kedarkoi. And v'im haya goyeh, goyeh means it's deteriorating. Not that it fell. It might fall. It's likely to fall. Soisroi, b'pnei asakana. You don't want it to fall on top of people. U'b'nei kedarkoi. Halacha zayin, boina adam itzdava. Person is allowed to build a bench, leishav to sit, or lishan allowed to sleep on it. You know why? It's called tzoyda chamoyed. Atzir, a hinge, v'hatzinoid, and a drain pipe, v'hakoida, and a lintel. We're speaking about parts that are connected to the openings and the doors and the locks of a home or of a chatzin. V'hamanul, v'hamafeach shenishberu, mesakna mamayid kedarkoi. Doesn't matter if it's made out of metal, whether it's made out of wood, because that will be a hefsed gadol. She'im yaneach hapesach v'soch v'dal shishavurais. And we already learned shekol sheyesh bo hefsed ein tzarach shinoi. Gewaldig. Halacha ches. Ein chayfim kever liyos muchan lamesha yamos. Which, by the way, it's a good thing. And today we have tractors, but you have to understand that you're living in certain environments. Sometimes it takes a long time to dig a grave. So then the Chevra Kadisha would already dig just in case. There's a percent, they know statistics. So that you can't do. But you can, in other words, you can dig, you could do on Chalamayit, but you cannot make a building. It's too much work. Like if the building was made and the building got ruined, right, they're consistent. You can even add b'midosoi, or it can be makatzin b'midosoi. I take it back. You can't dig and you can't build. Sorry. Thank you. Shkoyach. But if it was made, then you can fix it. And even though the chiddush is you're fixing it not because there is a mace mutal afanav. Halacha 9. Can't move a body. And not even the Rambam writes, by the way, this is not only related to Chalamayit. Really, it's a disgrace. So why do we have to have this halacha? Because Ella, if it's b'toich shaloi, it's b'toich shaloi is you own property. You want for the mace to be buried in his own property. Fear sharayomim b'faneu b'sharayomim afilo min ha'mechubed lebazui. Because a person would rather be interred in their own property, so to say, than out there. And for that, we have the halacha. That may not be done on Chalamayit. Halacha Yud, ein misalin asaylonis, you cannot deworm trees. You cannot techveis. Mizamin esanetiyos. Mizamin means they would place manure on the little trees. Veloy migazmin. The gazmin is to prune. Cannot prune. That's too much work. Abarvas, you can smear it, whether they're trees, whether they're produce, b'shemen. Why would they do that? For it not to die. And you can uproot the flax. Because you can use the flax to cover things, right, on moyed. So it's l'tzoyda chamoyed. The koitzenes you can harvest hops. Which could be done by moyed. No, it's all of these malachas. Too much work you can't do. Another thing, there has to be a tzoyda chamoyed. You cannot gather your behemalach inside a corral. If your kavana is lezabel esakarka, shaharehu medayer sodeyu b'moyed, because you are enriching your field. And you can't do that. We learned even like you can irrigate it if there's going to be hefsed meruba, but just to make it better, you can't do that. Even though you can argue, what are you doing already? No, you're gathering the animals in this location and then you move them to that location. If it happened on its own, that's beseder. The point is, you can't help the animals. You can't even give it over to someone else to do. But if the guy is not getting paid by the day, he's getting paid for the week, getting paid for the month, getting paid for the year, getting paid for 7 years, then you can even help him. That you can do. A shomer. Hazevel shalachotze. If there's zevel already in the field, misalka nois let's do it. The im nasas chotze kedepus bucket. Another heter. Okay, my chotze is so filled with manure, it looks like a barn. Then I can take it out. Let's see, it's like we had by Hilchah Shabbos that the Geraf shall eat. I think because it becomes disgusting. Okay, halacha yud beis. Hamash v'pnei akarka. You want to level that will be one nakuda. If your kavana is l'sakein makaim, because you need a place to put a krishal tfuah, or you want to prepare a place yadush boy, you're not trying to better the land. You're not doing it with tzorech hakarka. That's mutter. But if your kavana is lavodas aretz awesome. In other words, you can have different activities that they are the same. Your kavana only for what will determine mutter or asad. What are you talking about? Yeah, people need to level a ground. So leveling a ground, if it's l'tzorech hakarka, is asad. If you're doing it because you're doing it to prepare a space for something, then it's okay. You're gathering wood. If you're doing it because you need the wood, mutter. Oh, by the way, all these things are things that you can do on Cholamayit. I can gather my kitty. I can move my pile of grain, but I need to have a level ground. But if I'm doing it l'saken karka also, remember the Gemara says, most of these things you can even see from the Maisa what the kavan is. For example, if a person is gathering for firewood, if I remember, the Gemara says they would only gather big ones because big ones are better than little ones. They would leave the little ones. If you're gathering both big and little, as araya, you're trying to clear the karka. If you're opening up a dam, so why are you opening up a dam? Now, are you doing it only because that's the way you would trap fish? Why should you have water stream into a field, so then the water gets absorbed in the ground and the fish remain on the field? Then it's mutter. But if you're doing it lahashkis, it's also. You're trimming branches from a palm tree. If you're trimming those branches to give those branches to an animal, that's mutter. But the im l'schaven avoid the sealing also. Oh, that's all. In all of these cases, and Allah Yud Beis, they go about the Chazal give ways for people to notice what you're doing it for. Allah Yud Gimel. Tanur an oven, v'keraim, a range. If you want to make them, and it's possible that you can make them, and they will dry, and they will be ready to be used on the moyed. Good, then ois and ois. But if the time that you need to make these ovens is such, you need a week. It's already cholamoyed, you can't do it. The imlav in ois and ois. Benkach o benkach boinen al cheres sholtanu. You are allowed to place on a you can place a upper layer on top of. That will for sure, I think, because it's going to be ready. Or benkach means even though it's not going to be ready, you're adding a layer of mortar. Or umisargan asamitas, you can tie cords on a bed. The noikrim asarachayim, you can clean out the mill. This is not a problem. Upaischalam ayin, you can make a hole in the center of the mill. Umamid and oisim, you can even set up the mill, right? You set up the top stone on top of the bottom stone. You can build a water conduit for a mill. You are allowed to seal a jug of wine in order for it not to get ruined. You want to properly close it. The zoifsin, you can also seal even a bottle, even a jug, okay, with tar, right? Because that's not called something with a Torah. Even if there's no hefsid, why is there no hefsid yakir? Because the amount of wine in the jug won't last that long that it has to be sealed, but that's not called a Torah. The soisman al pia chavias, you can always cover the mouth of a barrel of beer. Beer kadesh loiti pase. Umachapen as aktsias bakash, you are allowed to cover ktsias is figs. Remember that. Yeah, but always a mishnais, and people would put the figs out to dry, and there's a reason for you have to cover it with straw. That will help those figs not deteriorate. Kadesh lo yevdu, even though you're not going to eat it now. Umanakechin, you can soften the begodim b'yodayim. B'pnei shumaisa hedid. Aval ein oisim kishrei beis hayadayim. B'pnei shumaisa uman. You cannot make cuffs. Kishrei beis hayadayim is cuffs. V'chein kol chayotze bozeh. Halacha tezvav koitzet sinsi parnei chamor shel rechayim, cutting the toenails of the chamorim. Gavaldik. You can do it because they're the chamor. They're walking around the mill. It's going to work better. So you could do that. You can build a feeding trough for an animal. The susha reichav olav also mutter litter tziparnov and even l'sarkoi, because you want to drive in a fancy car. Something beautiful about a sus, the Rolls Royce. The ein marbian behema b'moed. You cannot mate animals on moed, but you can be makis dam. The ein moinem memenu refuah. V'chol macholas umashkin. That even though they are not also Michael B'riyim, which makes them always more problematic, they are only used l'refuah. Muter la'adam la'acham v'l'shtoisam b'moed. Even though by that's an example where on Shabbos, because of the Gzeirim and the Rabbanon, that we might grind up the medicines, on Shabbos we can't do that. So on Shabbos, having something, even though I'm having it l'refuah, but it's Michael B'riyim, I'm allowed to do. On Cholamoid, even if it's only for ill people. Halacha tazai. Moving, can you move? Like chapanayim, no, can't move. You can't move from one chatzah to the other. Which means that from one house to the other in the same chatzah, you could. It's not such a big move. It's too much tircha.
Look, what are we saying? Ourselves?
Ourselves? No, I want to move. I'm moving my house. I take back, yeah, kid is right. You cannot move Kalim. Very good. You cannot move Kalim. You cannot schlep Kalim from here to there. Thank you. Good, I stand corrected. Aval mafano hu mi bais labayis v'oitzer chatzim. Umeviim Kalim. Now, if Kalim are coming that you need b'moed, you can bring it back from the base ha'uman. Like Kodim, Ukesasois, Vekoises, Solachiois. Aval Kalim shem tzrichim, like a machreshosh min haloitesh. A plow from an iron monger, or tzemer mebeisat sabo. You can't even use it on Yom Tov. That ain't meviim. But let's go to exceptions. We learned this in the previous chapter. If the Ummah needs to get paid, the im ein le'uman mal yoichal. So I would say the first thing is, you're not allowed to bring it, but pay him. But leave it by him. Problem is, many times you know that if you're going to pay the Uman and you won't take it, maybe the guy will deny that you paid him. So then you take it out, but you can't bring it to your house. Just take it out of his property. You understand? The bias hasamochloi. You can even bring it into your chutzner. You know what you cannot do? You cannot bring it into your house. Thank you. The whole halacha tezayin is about moving kelim. Good. Halacha yud zayin. Also, now let's go back to also lasois malacha ba'arba yomam tovim min amin cholomayla. Min amin cholomayla means mincha katana. Mincha katana is around 2.5 hours before. Mincha katana is like 3:30 p.m. Shows manias. Just like you may not do malacha arba shabbos. And more than that, goyarim boy. The only thing you can't do is beat him up. But now we have an exception. You know when you can give him makis out of Pesach HaChatzois, that's already different because and if you can put a person in a chedem, there's no need to say that makas mardus. Even when you do, either or. Why? How is that a Pesach different? Because it's a Yom Tov. How is it a Yom Tov? Because you bring karbonis. Why? Because sheyesh boy chagiga. What's this chagiga, guys? That's called chagigas arba asad. We'll learn that in Hilchas Pesach. Not the chagiga of Yom Tov. That's to eat the korban Pesach halosoivan. You can have leftover meat. So they had many menuyin on the korban Pesach, but the people wanted to eat something private. And ushchitas korban. Now halacha yutches lefikach yoim arba asad. Also, however, how is it kal? Because which is taken as man ashchit. All right, we had this in Mishnayos, right? Then now Allah you test even that people do malacha, don't it's not hefkervel. Well, yaschil katchila lasois malacha ba'arba asar afal pi that you can finish it koydem chatzos. The only thing that you can begin, guys, even b'makom shenohagu lasois is only shalosh umanayois bulvad hein shemaschin b'makom shenohagu lasois, and you can only do it until chatzois. And these are the three: achayotim, tailors. You can begin fixing something. Hasaparim, barbers. Hakoifsim, and launderers. But all other umanayois, guys, even b'makom shenohagu, it's only if he's cholba koydem arba asar who shagoyim at chatzois. That's why we restricted. Now the kasha is, what minute do I follow? Guys, help up. I am now in a place that don't do malacha in front of people. In other words, where people will see what you're doing. All of this is because, not because you're not allowed to, because you're going to cause machloikas. But you can do it by midbar. Why? Because you are from a place, you're limited to what we learned in Allah, your test, but those you could do. What about on the reverse? It's consistent. In other words, you follow the place where you came from. Because and we also say now, which means here's the irony. I'm going to a place, Yakir, so I have to be chmachma. I won't do. If people will notice me not doing, they'll also get upset. No, here we do malacha. So don't do, but in a way that people don't notice that. That you.
I went this far to shul.
Got upset with you. Yeah. Because of machlokes. Another thing. It's even more now. Again, amazing. Halacha chafalef. Final halacha. So unlike cholamoyed that we just learned that you're not allowed to transport kelim bebeis ha'uman, that's on cholamoyed. Erev, even though we said that Erev Pesach, right? Even after chatzois, it's like cholamoyed, not exactly. And even though those are kelim she'enim lo tzorech hamoyed, it's not as chomur as cholamoyed proper. Another thing, for Gerfen Zevel, Vitachas Ragla Behemo, you are allowed to bring it out to the Ashpa. You are allowed to Umayshivan Shevachim Latanagoylim. You can make a nest for chickens, or a Tanagoylis that sat Shloishes Yamim or Yasad ala Beitzim, and that Tanagoylis died, even though it's Erev Pesach and it's after Chatzois. You are allowed Umayshivan Acheres. You can bring a new Tanagoylis Tachteo, but Arba Asar. Unlike Moyed, ain't Moishivin. Avolim Barcha. But if the chicken ran away, even by Moyed, Malabeitzin. Yakir knows this. Then, how beautiful. The last din of the Helchas Shusas Shantiv, you can go chase after the chicken, even on Cholamoyed, to get it to come back. You have to know how to do it, because you have to give a good nash. You have to know how to chase. You have to make it advantageous for the chicken. Anyways, Berich Rachmana, the Sion, and now, my friends, we're going to start the new series, Hilchos Chometz Umatzah. This is today's third chapter. Hilchos Chometz Umatzah, let's read the Koiseres, Yesh B'chlolon Shmoyne Mitzvahs. Sholosh Mitzvahs Aseh, B'chamesh Mitzvahs Lois Aseh V'zeh Pratim. Aleph, Shaloi Lechel Chometz B'yom Arba Asar. Guys, Midoi Raisa, B'chatzois HaYom Olamaylu. Chatzos Hayom also means from the 7th hour. From Shazmani is 1 p.m. We'll see that Abanan. We'll see in the first chapter already. Yeah, 1 hour, 2 hours, but that's number one. We're speaking about the mitzvahs midorais. Number two, lahashbiz, to destroy. Remember the machlokes? Does destroying mean fire? Does destroying mean afilu? You can grind it and then you throw it into the wind. Right? To destroy. So'ir, Ma'arba asad. Just guys, remember, so'oid means a leavening agent, and the big cloud will be when it comes to hilchos chametz u'matzah that the word so'oid, leavening agent, something that makes other things chametz, and chametz will always have the same status. So'oid and chametz. Halacha gimel shaloi lechel chametz kol shiva. Daled shaloi lechel even ta'aroives chametz, a mixture that has in it chametz kol shiva. Chametz should not be seen in our possession, as we will explain. 6, chametz should not be found. 7, lechol matzah b'leila pesach. The only obligation of eating matzah is the night of chutz la'aretz, both nights. That's the chiyuv. Halacha ches, the unique mitzvah lesaper v'yitzias mitzrayim ba'oisa halayla, not zechidas yitzias mitzrayim every day. Sipur is only the night of the Seder, the night of Pesach. And let us start. Pei Krishan. Pei Krishan is going to be all the definition of the prohibition of chametz, the foundational isur, and we will have 10 halachas beginning with halacha aleph. Says the Rambam. Now, guys, we just read in the Koseres, the isur of chametz is from Erev Pesach. Yes, but when it comes to the punishment, big difference. It's the punishment of Pesach proper is more chomer. That's why we're going to separate it. If you eat, God forbid, a kazayis chametz from the night of the 15th for the whole 7 days, which is at soif yom echad ve'esrim Nisan, b'meizid the chayv kares. We'll see in a moment, Yakir, that even though it's asur midoy raisa to eat it from Erev, from the 7th hour, you're not going to get kares for that. That's why we're separating it. Shenamar ki kol ha'oichel chametz v'nichrisa. And the rule is if a person ate it b'shoigig chayiv korban chatzos kavua, and that ve'echad ha'oichel, or even if you're memache, if you converted chametz into a liquid and you drank it, you will equally be chayiv kares. We don't say you changed it. No, halacha beis is another rule. Hachametz be Pesach is even osir b'hano. Why? Because when it says v'lo yei ochel chametz, what that means is lo yia boy heter achil. You're not allowed. It cannot be used in a way where it can lead you to eating. What does it mean? If I benefit from something, even the money, I can use that money to buy food. That's pshat heter achil, which means asur b'hano. Chametz b'reshus b'Pesach, another din. If I leave chametz in my possession, even though I didn't eat it, I'm over on tul avim. As it says, and it says, and don't tell me, the Torah only speaks about so'oir. Here the Rambam writes, the isur chametz, the isur so'oir, sheboy machamtzim, is the same. So even though the Torah used the words lo yira v'lo yimatzah by so'oir, it equally means for chametz. However, halacha gimel ein aloykim mishum lo yira v'lo yimatzah. There's a rule. What's the rule, my friends? Any lav she'ein boy ma'aseh, you're not going to be chayiv malchus. So if a person already owned chametz before and they kept it, they're violating bal yirah, they're violating bal yimatzah, they're not going to be chayiv malchus. But there are ways that you can be chayiv malchus for that. How? Ela im kain, you bought it on Pesach. You made it on Pesach. You understand? I did a ma'aseh that made chametz. So now I own it and I made a ma'aseh. Kedei sheyaseh ma'aseh. Avalam hoylei chametz koydem ha-Pesach. We bought Pesach, and God forbid, v'loi bi'aroi. If I owned chametz from before Pesach and I did not do what I needed to do, even though I'm violating bal yirah and bal yimatzah, I'm not going to get malchus because I didn't do a ma'aseh. If I made the chametz on Pesach, if I bought it on Pesach, then I did a ma'aseh. Then I'll be chayiv malchus. But don't think he'll get away with it. Now, halacha dalet chametz she'avar olav Pesach. Asur b'hana lo'olam, the isur of hana that we learned from the words lo yei ochel chametz lo yei boy heter achila continues, but it's not miday raisa. But that was I can ask with the Seifrim. Mipnei she'avar al bal yirah bal yimatzah, therefore the chachamim asruhu, and that's afilu hinichoy b'shgaga or even ba'oinus. You may never use it. You cannot have any benefit. Which is why today, if you have a store owner that if God forbid, Tinnik Shanishma, because of Golos, they don't know about keeping Pesach, you can't buy anything from the market. You have to make sure it belongs to a goy, or Baruch Hashem now, many of these big companies that have Jewish ownership, They write a Shtar Mechira. Halacha hey, chametz and the sort of the davar achar Pesach, another day. If chametz gets mixed on Pesach, that's the big chiddush. Bein b'minoi, bein shaloi b'minoi, makes no difference, makes no amount. It's never bottle, never bottle. Hareza oisei b'chol shehu. The chametz shel Yisrael shall over all about Pesach. Another din. Afal pishu aser bano, as we just mentioned. Now, hold on. What about if it got mixed? It will be bottle. But the isum that Rabbanon, and you want to know something. When we say bein asad of bein b'minoi bein shaloi b'minoi, the Rambam, we don't have time right now, but there's difference of how you mabatel the minoi, how you mabatel the she'ein minoi. However, it's batel b'roiv, batel b'tam, batel b'shishim. This din, guys, bein asad yakir, bein shenasad of b'pesach, bein shenasad of shaloi b'pesach. After Pesach, if it's batel, you can't have it on Pesach, but you can have it after Pesach. Either is a knas. These are the big rules. Let's go back there. Ein chayav kodes. Ela al achilas atzmi shel chametz. Abel eruv chametz, a mixture containing chametz. He's giving examples of typical foods. Kutach habavli. Kutach habavli was what the Yerushalmis called a disgusting food. The Bavlis loved it. You had rotten milk, moldy bread, and some other stuff, and that would be a dip. Whew. So so there's bread in there, or v'sheichar hamadai, meaty and beer. Even though you're not allowed to have it on Pesach, you'll be chayiv malchus, but you're not going to be chayiv kodesh. How do you know you're chayiv malchus? Because it says kol machmetzes lo yisar chelu. That's the source of any taroivus chametz aser midorais. When it comes to punishments, let's go to the general rules. Only if you ate a kazayitz, so whenever you're going to get malchus, it's not only a kazayis, it's a kazayis of pure chametz. So if the taroivus is, there's only 2% of chametz, I'm going to be chayiv malchus. If I ate the toich zman achilas paras, a kazayis, who shall like him in a toida? Even though you're not allowed to eat it, guys, midoiraisa, because the Rambam paskins like Rabbi Zajac, chatzi shir also in a toida. You're not going to be chayiv malchus. You're going to get malchus margus. Im achal eno like ela malchus margus. Halacha zayin. Oichel min hachametz atzmi b'pesach kol shehu. Ha'oichel min hachametz atzmi b'pesach kol shehu. Hadeza asur min ha'toira. Very important. Shenemar lo yeyachel chametz. Af al pikein. Again, you're not going to be chayiv kodesh b'mezid or kodman b'shoigig. Ela ashir shu kezayis. But v'oichel pachos mikezayis b'mezid. Makanois and malchus margus. At kan. Chametz b'Pesach. And as we spoke out in the Koseres, that Rambam already told us that even eating chametz out of Pesach from the 7th hour is asun midah eraisa. The reason why the Rambam began this chapter by speaking about Pesach proper is because the penalty of kares and chatos b'shoigeg is only from the night of. But asur le'echol chametz b'yoyim arba asur mechatzos hayoyim u'lomayla, which is the beginning of the 7th hour's maniyos b'yoyim, not midrabanan. But not the pasuk of Kodesh. It's another pasuk, and that's the pasuk in the A where it says "Lo yisoichal olav." Olav means on the korban Pesach. From when can you bring the korban Pesach? From chatzos hayoyim u'lomayla. Lo yisoichal olav chametz. Kolomer al korban Pesach. Kach lomdu b'piyashmu b'perish davar zeh. Lo yisoichal chametz misha'a shera'uya l'shchitas haPesach. Even though technically they would only bring the korban Pesach after they would bring the Taman Shel Bein Harbaim. This is the only korban to bring afterwards. And Taka, the earliest, the one time a year that they not always, they would bring it earlier. Even when it was out of Shabbos, out of Yom Tov, they would bring it they would bring it at 12:30. Doesn't matter. It's man ru'oyim. Shel Bein Harbaim v'chatziyayin. Halacha 9. V'asru chachamim lechol chametz mitchila shashish. The chachamim added an hour. Why? Kedei shelo yiga be'isur Torah. It's like the first Mishnah Brachas. I know that there we're talking about from only until Chatzos. Don't go until the last second. Don't push it till the end. So they added 1 hour. Meaning, umetchila shashishis. What did the Chachamim say? Chametz is usher both b'achila and b'ana. Shashishis medivrei soifrim v'shar hayoim, which means mishvius u'mayla min ha'torah. We're not done yet, but now we're going to add another hour. But the other hour earlier is only achila mutar b'ana. That's the hour in which today we burn the chametz. That's an hour in which it's still mine enough to sell it if I didn't sell it until then, because it's still mine. Once it's already asur, even midrabanan, it's not mine. Shah chamishis ein oichlem bo chametz. Why isn't 1 hour enough? Because if it's going to be a cloudy day, that's where a person can make a mistake. Shemayita ben chamishis l'shishis. You know what's beautiful? Say what's beautiful. The Rambam doesn't say shemayita ben chamishis l'shvi'is, because the sun is on the other side of the sky. Here you're seeing something unique. Normally, you don't make a gzeira l'gzeira. Guys, don't forget that Shah Shishis is only asur midrabana. We're adding 1 hour only for achila, offense, not to break the rabbanan. That's unique. It's unusual. Kedei shalita mein chamishis v'shishis, which you can make that mistake. But ve'ein asur bana b'shah chamishis. And because of that, he gives an example. If a person has truma that's tamei misafek, you know what the rule is? The rule is that you cannot eat truma tameya. You can burn truma tameya. What happens if you have a doubt? It's called toilin. Toilin means you don't do anything with it. Now let me ask you a question. If someone has chametz dika truma, they cannot burn it b'shah chamishis, because the downside of burning it is that maybe it's not tameya, you're destroying it. So if it would be asur bahana, you would have to burn it then. But on this hour, you leave it the way it is. Another example, if you have lechem toida, don't forget that carbon toida, 10 of the 40 loaves are chametz mamish. One goes to the kohen, and the other 9 has to be eaten by the owners. Now, what do you do with it? Now, guys, remember, even though I'm obligated to eat it, and on something else here, there's an isur of moisa. But since midrabanan, you can't eat the chametz, you can't eat it. But you can't burn it. That's already a bezoyin. You know when you can burn it? At the beginning of the 6th. Because on the 6th, it's asur midrabanan, even to have anah. The chayotzim of chametz shu kodesh, lo yoichlem lo yisarfen, acha the gesha shishis, and then soifer nakol. We don't have this nowadays. But these are 2 cases that you would not burn it b'shah chamishis. It's amazing. The final halacha of this chapter that Rambam makes azasin up is holam adatom shemut alechel chametz v'yayim arba asar at shah revi'is. But the ein oichlem b'shah chamishis. But during the shah chamishis you can have anah. From shah shishis it's only asar midrabanan. So b'shah shvis you get makas midraisa. But for oichel b'shah shishis makas mardos. You already aloikim in Torah, but you know what? You're not chayiv kares. Chayiv kares is only from the night. Gavaldi, God willing to be continued.